We conclude today the third chapter in the Gersa Tshuva, in the epistle of penitence, repentance, dealing with the concept of a gift that we give after doing our part to abandon any negative behavior and take upon ourselves to go to be a servant of God, to serve God, to follow what the King wants from us. And the gift, again, as a reminder, in the times of the Holy Temple, was an offering on the altar. That offering was in the stead of the individual, so to speak. Now, it became the concept of fasting, because it's also giving your flesh and blood by fasting to God. And as the Alter Rebbe said, we're not so capable of to fast today. In other words, fasting here and there is one thing, but continuous fasting for, if you got angry once, 151 fasts. If you got angry many times, that could be great dieting away, but not suggested. As the Alter Rebbe said it, quoting the sages in the Talmud, it's sinful, actually sinful to fast if you don't have the strength. Now, of course, when you're obligated, like Yom Kippur or Tisha B'Av, or this Sunday actually is a Shiva Sabbat Tammuz, that's a different story. But to constantly be fasting, if you're not a person who has strength and it doesn't deter or take away from your day, and especially from your learning, then one should not do it. What should you do? How do you redeem yourself? So we spoke yesterday. Tzedakah, charity. Charity is also the idea of giving of yourself, of that you worked hard for that money, or that money could have been used for your well-being, your physical well-being. You could have bought food, comfort, or anything for your life, and you gave it away, a gift. So that's where we are right now. The Alter Rebbe now says, nevertheless, in our generation, even though fasting is not something we should be constantly doing, nevertheless, he says, during one's entire lifetime, he suggests that someone should fast during your entire lifetime for a particular sin that a person has transgressed, in order, again, to bring that gift to God. It's not about repentance. Well, it's sort of like the second level of repentance, if we explain. Repentance, tshuva, means you abandoned negative ways. So you went away from a bad space. But to get into a completely pure space, that's the gift that we need to give. To be not just forgiven, but it is forgotten in the sense that you stand before God as you did before the sin, which is, that's pretty, that's a very strong sense of ownership for a person's relationship with God. And as we've used that also for an understanding our relationship in human relationships, as it would reflect there. That's a great ownership, complete ownership. And think about it in our lives, that how not necessarily we do that in our relationships. We ask for forgiveness, but are we doing that second level, that we stand before that person as if before we had done anything wrong? Now, of course, that person might never forget because they're human, but before God, that will happen. In any case, so the Alter Rebbe says, at least once in your lifetime, you should fast when it comes to grave sins like wasteful emission, which was 84 fasts that a person should, sorry, 1 second. Left door. Sorry. And he said, do it over a lifetime. Meaning, if it takes 10 years, 8 fasts a winter. Don't do it in the summer now where you have a long day. Because remember, these fasts are only from dawn until until nightfall. So if you do it in the winter, we're here in Montreal, nightfall is like 4:45 p.m. and the fast will only start like 7 o'clock, and you can wake up before that and eat something. And if the fast starts at 7 o'clock, and you wake up before that and eat something, you made up before you went to sleep. That's the halacha, that you're going to eat something before the fast, before the time that the fast would start. And that makes it really easy. So if you do that, don't do it in 1 year, one winter. Do it over 10 years. So that would be 8 fasts, 9 fasts a winter. The Alter Rebbe says. And if you want to complete further, that's for 84. But if you want to complete the 252, because we said it's 3 times, if you did the sin more than once, right? Then that would be 252 fasts, as we said, 3 times 84. So don't do that don't do a complete fast, but according to the Jerusalem Talmud, a half-day fast is also considered a fast. So in other words, in the winter, at around 12 noon, it's already half day, and that would be considered a half-day fast. So you can put 2 half-day fasts together, the Alter Rebbe says. That's a way to bring a complete gift to God. Now, I must tell you, the Alter Rebbe says this, but I'm not certain of people who do that today. I haven't done it. I don't know people that do that, even though the Alter Rebbe writes this. But I just, want to make sure that I don't want to put a burden on anybody. I don't know if this is the first thing that we should think about, right? But the Alter Rebbe does say it. So, and now beyond that, the Alter Rebbe says, if you want to, even achieve more, or perhaps even, as we've mentioned before, if it's difficult to fast, which for many it is. And again, maybe this is not the way, but he concludes this chapter in saying that tzedakah, be charitable, and constantly, and actually give over and above the law that says that you shouldn't give more than 20%. And the Alter Rebbe says, you're not supposed to give over 20% of your net earnings. He says, that's okay. For healing of the body, you would spend untold amounts of money, right, in order to get physical healing of your body, right? God forbid if someone needed an operation, they would spend everything that they have if it's going to save their lives. So Alter Rebbe says the same ideas over here when it comes to the soul, to redeem the soul, to bring healing to the soul. Then don't worry that if you're giving over and above this amount of 20% of your net earnings, because we would again do that for the physical body, so we should do it just the same for our soul, to bring complete healing, redeeming the soul as it stands before God. And that should not, concern the individual. And as the Alter Rebbe concludes the chapter, says, the kindnesses of God, for they are not concluded, or they don't end. And so in Hebrew, it's Chazdei Hashem ki lo tamnu. Tamnu has a double meaning. Tamnu means God has not concluded. In other words, He's infinite. His kindnesses, they don't conclude, they don't end. But the word tamnu means that we have not We are not perfect, tamim. Because we're not perfect, God has given us a way that we can, his kindnesses should be infinite. How? When we are also infinite. What is it? Infinite? Infinite in our giving. What does it mean infinite in our giving? We don't have an infinite amount to give. Giving unstintedly. Giving without a parameter, without any borders, limitations to the amounts that we give and how often we give. Because we're and with the mindset that what are we giving is redeeming our soul. That's the conclusion of the chapter. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvarei. L'chaim, l'chaim, not fasting. For those doing Tanya journal, and for those who are not yet doing it, I still strongly suggest. Spoken to a few people, and they've told me what this is doing for their lives, what this is doing for their relationships, their marriages, their personal relationships is like unreal from several people that I've heard from. So, what are the salient points that we can take home with us today? At least some of my thoughts. Of course, by the way, in the book, this is where to add the highlights. Number 2 is to add highlights from the daily Tanya learning. And then, of course, number 3 is how to apply it in your lives. Now, I want to mention that for those who are doing this, each day we have something new that you can apply. And I might get a little overwhelming because like every day there's something else to apply to my life. So just to heed that, might be good to concentrate on one thing, whether it's for the week or something, as in the front burner, and the other things that are, the take home of the day can be on the back burner because it may be way too much, that we take upon ourselves. So just an important thought. Just important. Okay. So the first point that I would like to mention is about how we look at our body versus our soul. That I think is an important point the Alter Rebbe is bringing out over here. Is that naturally, we're physical people. At least I am. We're all physical people, but we are rooted in physicality. Right? Holy people are rooted in their soul, but and if anybody is fooling themselves and thinking that they're rooted in spirituality, in their soul, I would suggest don't, take a second look at yourself, because it's very unlikely. That doesn't mean that we don't engage in spiritual and in our connection to God. I'm not suggesting. I'm talking about what's our basic root. Where are we at? Our first responder to any situation is our animal soul. What's good for me, not how does this connect me to God. That might be a second response, but not the initial gut response. Well, okay, that's who we are. Fine. But the Alter Rebbe is telling us over here that we should look at our soul and bringing healing to our soul equally as we do to our body. That's a powerful statement. Again, we don't naturally do it, and that's why the Alter Rebbe has to say that over here. Give unstintingly, right, above and beyond what the law requires you to give, and don't worry about your giving beyond what you're, the 20% that the sages in the Talmud say that you should give only to that amount. So the Alter Rebbe says that's only because the mitzvah of tzedakah is only for up to 20% of net earnings. But the healing of the soul that tzedakah provides, that redeems the soul, brings a cleansing to the a cleansing brings a complete cleansing to the soul. Not atonement. Atonement we are got from the tshuva, but brings a deeper cleansing of the soul to perfect the soul. That's powerful. That we have that opportunity. That God gives us that kind of kindness. That's amazing. So to be able to look at the soul that way, and tzedakah, that's the vehicle to bring that, is an amazing take home. Right? And in general, what does that mean? When we're able to look at our soul, at least equally to the body in this respect, right? And therefore, what we do is try to bring things for the soul that's a benefit over the things of the body, or we prioritize, the soulful things, which then gives us the capability that, you can push off breakfast and learn Tanya first. Now, if you're not going to learn Tanya properly without eating something, please eat before the class. I mean, some of you already, it's afternoon and nighttime. You get the point I mean, that I'm getting at. You need the strength in order to learn. But, if you're prioritizing or giving value to the soul and want to redeem it, so then you're going to seek the opportunities on how to do that. That's one point. Second point is the idea of tzedakah. What the Alter Rebbe is introducing an idea over here to us about being charitable. Let's take that word in English. Charitable. Charitable. The connotation is that I'm special. Why am I special? Because I'm being charitable. I'm giving something that's mine. Yes, so according to Jewish teachings, you're obliged to do that. But the attitude that I would have is that I'm giving to someone less than me. And I'm, the one who doesn't have. I'm the one who has. And I'm the giver. That makes me special. I stand above the one who is being given to, because, right? So, first of all, the Talmud tells us an interesting thing, that greater is the good done to the giver than the good that has been done to the recipient of charity, of tzedakah. What does that mean? So, the Talmud explains that when a person gives $1, $10, $1,000, right, to Chabad, right? So, what have you done? I mean, the recipient is a recipient, right? Or the person who, you gave something, who was a pauper, you gave. They got some money, they got some food now they can eat, or that, they can do whatever. What did you get by giving? You got a mitzvah. You got an attachment to God. You got fulfillment of your purpose in life. So greater kindness is done to the giver than the recipient. So don't feel, like, look, I'm the, I stand on top. No, not really. You're getting more than what you're giving. You got a mitzvah. You got a connection to God. You got to fulfill your purpose that you were created for. That's a lot greater than the person who got the money. Yeah, well, that's if, and this connects with the first idea, if your soul has a priority. If your body has a priority, right, in your life, then I'm really giving something away over here. I'm really giving something away. This money that I could use for my benefit. And that's really, I'm special by doing that. I might not always want to be special, because I'd rather have it for me. So I'll do what I got to do as a minimum. That's because the body is the priority. If the soul is the priority, then what's happening here? I can give unstintingly. How am I going to do that? Because I'm getting more benefit. That's just based on the Talmud. The Alter Rebbe is adding something here. What is he adding? He's adding something here that this is redeeming your soul. So not only do you get a mitzvah, which means a connection with God, but it's a redeeming of your soul, that it's now bringing a completion to your soul, right? Because of things that we may have done that are not I, that we have failed. We've done some transgression. And the Alter Rebbe says here simply, even when it comes to transgression of wasting time, where we could have learned Torah, where we could have done something good, and we wasted time. Even though it's not a huge, terrible, sinful thing, but yet, by recognizing that and wanting to redeem ourselves, how do we do that? Give. In that manner of giving, you can give unstintingly. Why? Because not only are you getting the mitzvah, you're getting redemption, redeeming your soul. And if the soul is important to you, then it'll be easy for you to be very giving. You won't feel, like, another $10 I gave, another $100 I gave, another dot 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 dot. I'm gonna feel that, and you'll be able to do that. That's powerful. Take home. Okay. Chaim. I'm going to get to some questions over here, and then if we have anything that people would like to share. Davida, I need your help here too. Okay, Shoshana. Shoshana Bina is the only one with a question, or the first question. Okay, a reminder, question marks before you ask the question. Otherwise, I don't see it. When it comes to tzedakah, should we respond to the need when choosing an amount to give? Or is it better to calculate a percentage and trust that the needs will be met? That's a very good question, and I'm just going to give a very general answer because, if you're talking about someone on the street who's a beggar and you don't know how they're going to use that money, right? They might be using it for drugs. And if you're giving a quarter, if you're giving $1, you don't have to make a calculation. You're giving $10, you got to know where you want to give it in a way that there's a little more of a surety where it's going. Giving $100 for sure, right? You want to make sure that you're not giving to someone's addiction. If it's like a pauper on the street type of thing, right? Someone cleaning your windows at the light. You give them a quarter, you don't have to think about it. $1, you don't have to think about it, right? But if you're giving larger amounts, yeah. So then you gotta be first of all considerate of what the needs are, what those particular needs are, and that's those kind of details will you have to learn in the laws of tzedakah, but that's a general idea. I hope that Shoshana Bina, let me know if that brings clarity, or some clarity at least. Davida, is it that we give money instead of a fast since it is also physical, or can we give other forms of charity that are non-physical, such as good deeds? Obviously, we can always do good deeds, there's no question, but that's not what we're talking about over here. We're talking about instead of fasting. Remember, fasting is instead of the offering on the altar. The offering on the altar is sort of like your replacement, that you're giving the flesh, the blood of the animal on the altar, which is metaphorically your flesh and blood, right? So now we don't have that, so you're giving flesh and blood by fasting. Fasting is not the ideal for us to do, maybe a little bit here and there, and even that, I wouldn't start with that. Start with giving tzedakah. So that is giving of your flesh and blood because you worked hard for it, and now you're giving something that could be of a benefit to your physical well-being, right? And you're giving that away. You're gifting that. So that's, specifically, we're specifically talking about tzedakah. We're not talking about, you know, acts of loving kindness. Acts of loving kindness have their place, and we'll speak about it more later, by the way, and the importance and the value of that. But remember that our the context over here, tshuva, and the second level, after we've abandoned negative ways, and now we want to be not just forgiven, which we've been forgiven through the act of our tshuva, of our penitence, but we want to stand before God, in the purest way that we can. So this is the formula of the sages and of the Alter Rebbe. I hope that was clear, Davida. Okay. So Pamela, you say it's always better to be the giver than the taker. Well, no, by giving you're the ultimate taker, because you're getting a mitzvah and you're getting you're redeeming your soul. That is the notion over here. I want to clarify, make sure that we got that, because that's really important. Because without that notion, it's going to be hard to really be a real giver unstintingly. We'll give, but we're going to feel it. For some people, they feel it in $1. Some people, they feel it in $10. Some people feel it in $100. That I gave. And some people don't feel it until $1,000. Everybody's different, right? Nishan, do you? Oh, no. I mean, I'm only married to Jewish people. That's the question. Nothing to do with race, by the way. Has to do two Jewish souls. Okay. Michael, I am safe and feeling self-assured that my tzedakah has been given appropriately. I believe that I have done what I can in my life. Okay. But can we all second guess ourselves? Listen, do the best you can. It's between you and God, by the way. No one's checking how much you're giving. No one's coming around and saying, oh, I'm sorry, you didn't give. This is, by the way, I should tell you, in the times of the Holy Temple, there was real serious obligation that a person had to give, from tithes and so on and so forth, that was obligatory. Right? Anyways, that's not for now. Okay, so Michael, thank you. Darren, is fasting needed in our soul? So let's stick with I would suggest that the first step is, let's not work on the fasting aspect, except when we're obliged to fast. But let's work on the charitable aspect and just like try to incorporate what we learned today and how, the soul has a primacy in our lives, and therefore makes it easier to give, as opposed to, the body being so overwhelmingly primary in our lives. Davida, I know now that there were sacrifices in the Holy Temple for the poor. What do we give if someone can't fast and is poor? You can still give. A poor person is obliged to give tzedakah. Still obliged to give. Okay? Obviously, it's going to be a less. But, we have in the times of giving offerings in the temple, there's the poor man's offering, right? That is much less. And God says, Reach nichayach, that is a divine pleasure, the gift that you've given. And if your intent is to do it in order to give a gift to God, to connect to God, then whether the amount is the dollar, $10, $100, $1,000, or more, right? Everybody in accordance to what they're capable of giving. That's what's important. I hope that was clear. Okay, do we have in Clubhouse, I went through all the questions. I think. Oh, Andrew, does college retirement savings come first? What is counted to get to net? Net earnings means, what the government takes from you. Obviously, it's not net earnings because it's not disposable income. Disposable income, what you are able to use for your own personal or for the family benefit or for whatever you choose. That is where minimum 10% we need to give. And the maximum is 20% according to the law of charity. But what the Alter Rebbe is saying here, to redeem our soul, it's a lot of money, by the way. If a person's net earnings of $50,000, so 10% is $5,000 that you got to give to charity. Net earnings, right? After taxes, it's $50,000, right? So you got to give minimum $5,000. Maximum, according to the law of charity, $10,000. Here he's saying that you can even go beyond that because you would spend, if it was life-threatening illness, you would spend whatever earnings you have to, make sure you live. So he's saying over here too, to redeem your soul and to give true life to the soul. So you can do the same thing. Now, again, I'm just let's take the lesson from here, and if try to be at least minimally with the 10%, because I think about if you net earnings of $50,000, which is not a huge amount of net earnings, that you're obliged to give from there $5,000. That's are we doing that? And question that we all need to ask ourselves, and to work on that. And how do we do that? Because we're giving unstintingly. If you're already giving that, so then you gotta work to the next level. I hope that's clear. So, Michelle, I don't know if you had a question earlier, or if anybody else had a question or a comment they want to share. Alliston, there's much confusion between taking versus receiving. Again, remember, we're giving physically. We're giving physical money, right, to somebody. We're getting back. We're taking something spiritual. Mitzvah, connection to God, redeeming the soul. That's spiritual. So if the more we are in tune with the spirit, the more then we're going to be attuned to the fact that we're really taking, right? The fact that we're really taking. And the less we're in tune with that, then of course the more we're going to feel. So, Liba, not sure if you missed a point. Yes, is it better to give smaller amounts of tzedakah daily than one amount, only a few times? Excellent. We're going to actually learn about that in the fourth part of Tanya, Liba. But just briefly, the Rambam says, in every act that you give is a refinement of the person, right? Going against the physical nature or the animal nature of the individual, that we are self-directed. So every act of giving is a refinement of the individual. So if you give once $1,000, right? Or you give, every day, $30, and then over the month you give the $1,000, by way of example, right? You've refined yourself 30 times by the act of giving. It's a lesser amount. That's true. But there's something about the act of, just reaching out and giving, and to do constantly. So it's important before we daven in the morning, even if it's just a few coins that you're putting in. That act of constantly doing We see that from the Rebbe, how he was constantly, you know, giving, putting into pushkas and giving and giving. Okay, so yes, Liba, 100% correct. Cindy, suggesting that we give, the soul goes beyond the fifth, right? That's what the Alter Rebbe is saying, that, um, you know, again, no one's, everybody is between you and God. If you're not giving 10% yet, work on giving that 10% unstintingly. That would really, you know, you're not making ends meet. How are you going to give the 10%? All right, I don't know how to answer that. It's a matter of faith, ultimately. It's a matter of faith that we and trust in Hashem. And I'm not suggesting that's simple and easy, but I'm suggesting that it might be plausible. Now, there's intricacies. So sometimes maybe you owe money, and am I giving tzedakah before I make the payments of what I owe? So the finer details, if there's particular issues, and yes, they need to be worked out. And now's not the time, of course. But greater discussion another time. So Cindy is saying that maybe a person's going to feel that it's never enough that you're giving, and therefore you're not going to properly take care of yourself. So again, thank you, Cindy. It depends where you're holding right now and what you're giving. If you're giving below 10%, work on the 10%. And with the notion, and I guess maybe okay, I think let me clarify. Let's start with the notion that the Alter Rebbe is giving us, the mindset that we can work on, and from there it'll express itself in how much we give, right? Let's start with the notion that me giving is not that I'm giving something away that could have been used for me. Yes, it's true, but that's from a physical point of view. From the spiritual point of view, I am thrilled to give because, first of all, I get a connection, I get a mitzvah, connection to God through to mitzvah, one of the 613 commandments, right? So, tefillin I put on once a day and, I have that connection, but charity I can do constantly and get that connection. So that notion that I have that connection constantly through the act of giving, first notion, and that's important to me. And the second notion is that this is redeeming my soul from the ills that I have done. That's very powerful. And if that becomes an important thing for me, it will express itself that I'm never going to feel, oh, it's never enough, because you always want to give more. Now, sometimes you can't. And fine. So, it's not about guilt. Don't feel guilty. That's your Yetzer Hara talking. Or your mother, which is your mother talking to you, but in Yetzer Hara talking to you of guilt. Guilt doesn't get you anywhere. It gets you down a slippery slope to negativity. But if we try to live more with that notion, so then we will naturally be giving more. And whether now I'll be giving 10%, or if I gave already 10%, now I'm going to give even more than that. I'm just not going to feel the sense of that I gave away something, so to speak. I'm going to feel the the pleasure of the giving, the exaltedness in the giving, because I'm sensing a connection, and I'm sensing, or aware of at least, of the redeeming of my soul. I hope that clarified you for you, Cindy. Tim, please share with us.
Yes, question or clarification. So successful financial planning would be simply giving.
Very good.
Okay. I won't go any further, but typically saving and investing is the highlight of successful financial planning from another point of view. However, through faith, giving tzedakah is a good way to go.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Julie says that she's noticed the more that she gives, the more that she receives. And actually, thank you for mentioning that, Tim, and Julie over here, to bring the two ideas together. Is that um, not later on we will learn more about this, about tzedakah, but right now, excuse me, the notion over here of redeeming, but there is also that we see the more we give, not only we get spiritually, but we actually get physically more from God. And thank you, Julie, for mentioning that. But that is not the teachings here specifically. We will have those teachings later on. But yeah, a good point. Um, okay, Robert, tzedakah using credit cards, 20% interest. No, no, not a good idea. If you're not going to pay it off, then don't give tzedakah on your credit card and then not be able to pay it off the credit card. That's not a good idea. Alliston, I felt that the receiving, it's because someone is giving. Taking does not always mean someone is giving what is being taken. Also, the willingness between these two. Yes, that's very true. Clem says the more tzedakah that he's given lately, the more blessings he has received, especially in health, new friends, and also a healthy bank balance. Poh, amazing. Right. Okay, again, very true. And these points later on the Alter Rebbe will speak about. Specifically, that's the point here is the spiritual mindset, right, of the um, redeeming of the soul. So Cindy is asking, where is the boundary between self-care and care of others? Let's say your giving is a top priority, but can lead you to not sufficient self-care. Well, maybe this is a minority issue. For those who feel this, it can be quite the question. Our issue is not giving more, it's that we don't know where it's okay to say no and take appropriate self-care. Good question. So again, I think it's important that we appreciate. Um, I think it's important that we appreciate, Cindy. Thank you. Excellent question. That there is a self-care over here in our giving, not a physical self-care, but a spiritual self-care. So that's important. And again, the physical self-care, um, you know, you, you're right. There might be a minority of people who don't do that, and it's important. Actually, learning in Maimonides' teachings, Rambam's teachings of Rambam, the daily Rambam, is that we should not be overly austere and run away from the material world and so on. We should use the material world. So yeah, though the few people that have who take it to an extreme and don't take care of their physical needs. So you're right that, sometimes they need the opposite, two people, two chassans came into the Rebbe, two grooms before their wedding, separately, for Yechida's private audience. And one the Rebbe asked about the spiritual preparations for getting married. If he was involved, learning the Hasidic discourse, learning the laws of the mikvah or not the laws of mikvah, but the laws between relationship between husband and wife, and so on and so forth, and asked him about that. And then the next chassan, he came and asked him, "What's about the, do you have a photographer? You have someone for the flowers, and so on." Why was he asking differently for each one? Because the first guy is engaged in the physical preparations and the spiritual preparations, and everyone to make, to remind him that he needed to be involved in that too. The second one was so involved in the spiritual preparations that the physical preparations for the wedding was kind of being put on the side. And so yeah, it's true. Some people are like this and like that, and therefore have to make sure that we have the healthy balance. That is true. Absolutely true. Okay. I think we have answered the questions. Davida, is there a difference between someone giving to charity willingly or someone giving it because they feel forced that they have to give? Is there any difference between the intent and the deed here? Absolutely. The bottom line is the deed, right? Think about the organization that you give to. Of course, it's not better to give it, in the fullest warmth and lovingness. But think of the organization, or think of the poor person that's getting it. Poor person now has something to eat. The organization has something to live off and to do the work that they do. That's the most important thing, is the deed itself. That's being said, intent is important. And that's what the Alter Rebbe is teaching us over here, is about the intent, because only with that real proper intent are we going to be able to give in an unstinting way. Very good question. Okay. Anybody else here on Clubhouse? Quiet today. What's going on, Tim?
I've been doing as you suggested about my charity box. So it's getting filled. Where do I take it once it's completely filled?
Where do you take it? Okay. Well, you can take it to your local Chabad. You can take it to, there's different laws about, being charitable and giving. So, that's definitely one thing that can be done. Those particular details, it's, the halacha, you just can't take it anywhere. You can't give it to the local symphony. That's not the law of tzedakah. To your local symphony to give to them. But for Jewish causes, that are promoting Judaism and people bringing them closer to Judaism, through Torah and mitzvahs. So those are causes, and then to individuals that in the community that could be of benefit, that are of the community. Okay, that's a very general response.
Right. Specifically, I have it in my mind to pass it on to Chabad. So, is there a specific way of doing that? Would it be the same if I took it? Because I have a lot of coins and just a mixture of currencies. Do I take that to the bank and have a check, put it in my account?
Probably the best thing is, either you give it directly that way. You
Okay.
just drop it off. As a matter of fact, someone today came to shul to daven. He had yard site, and he brought a pushka that he has of ours to and dropped it off here. So he
Okay.
gave, and so we take care of. So definitely, that's something that Chabad house would do for sure. If you want to make it easier for them, you could, and just take out the money and just write a check, and you could use that money again to be giving, right? You could use that money again if that's, some people do
Oh
that.
yeah, perfect, perfect.
Yeah,
Okay, so that's an acceptable way to do that.
absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. All right. Michelle, please share with us.
Hi, Rabbi.
Good morning.
Hi.
Or
Good
or
morning.
good afternoon to you because you're in London, England.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just thinking about what the Rambam says and about this matter, about taking care of your physical being. And I really agree with that because I think what he's trying to say is that we need to treat ourselves like we matter. And because if we don't take care of ourselves, surely we'll become vengeful and cruel and take it out on the people around us, and that's not good for our soul. Whereas taking care of ourselves, we take care of others. We become more giving with our time, more approachable, spiritual, and most importantly, full of a positive force. Surely that is the most powerful thing for our soul. Yes, Rabbi?
Yes, absolutely. Um, so yeah, we need we the balance, but with the recognition that we're here to change the world. We're here to, and one of the ways is by changing ourselves. And how do we change ourselves? Is by giving of ourselves. So here in the reference is, you're giving an offering. It was on the altar, an offering of a fast, an offering of giving. So it's interesting. Come to, it's just a thought that just came to me. The fact that we're giving tzedakah as opposed to the fasting. Think about, fasting. Uh, who benefits? Well, my diet benefits. Maybe my health even benefits if I'm strong enough to fast. Okay, right? Um, and God says, okay, you gave me a gift. But here, ultimately, the greatest gift is that you're giving to someone else or some organization. Um, and so your gift that you're giving is now, there's a benefit beyond yourself, beyond, the gift that you give to God. It's now you're giving to others. And in that respect, perhaps is makes it the ultimate. So yeah, and absolutely. All right. Okay, folks. I think I need to say l'chaim, 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 everybody. Maim chaim, waters of life, physical water of life, and Tanya is the spiritual water of life. So Baruch Hashem. A reminder and thank you of today's learning, my yeshiva. You go to myeshiva.ca or .com rather. Yeah, I think it's, or is it .ca? I can't remember now. In any case, or come just on Zoom to learn with us, 770-770-6085 on Zoom or on Facebook, Chabad ZK, and it also is going to be on Clubhouse today because we're going to learn some Jewish ethics, Pirkei Avos, today at 12:45. That I'll be giving that class, and Rabbi Mendy will give it at 12 o'clock class. So come and join us. All right, folks, that's it for today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you, Chabad, Zich, and Kadeshim in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Reminder, Tanya Journal, whoever still wants to get, it's not too late. The effect is great. I strongly suggest that you get that at TanyaRabbi.com. TanyaRabbi.com. You can sign up for that. And the mentor program is starting tomorrow night, which I'm very excited about. Whoever still wants to get into that, let me know. And we will, or you can do that also through TanyaRabbi.com. Wishing everybody a wonderful day. Today's Yud Beis Tammuz, the 12th day of Tammuz. At the Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, was released from prison in 1927, and his redemption was not just redemption for himself, but all those that love Torah, all those that just even call themselves a Jew by a nickname, and nothing more. They've also been redeemed. Thank you for joining. Have a wonderful day. God bless you all.